Lesson 3: Media Theories and Frameworks. Here's an overview of major media theories. Agenda-setting theory suggests that the media influences what we consider important rather than telling us how to think. By emphasizing certain issues, the media shapes public priorities and perceptions. Key components of agenda setting include the following. Media agenda. This refers to the topics and issues that are emphasized by the media. The media agenda shapes what the public perceives as important. Public agenda. This is the list of issues that the public considers significant. The media plays a role in shaping this agenda through its coverage. Issue salience. The theory posits that the more coverage an issue receives, the more likely the public is to perceive it as important. This salience influences public opinion and discourse. Framing and priming. While agenda setting focuses on what issues are covered, framing involves how those issues are presented, and priming refers to the process of preparing the audience to think about an issue in a specific way. And two-step flow. This concept suggests that media effects are mediated by opinion leaders who interpret and disseminate information to their social networks, further influencing public perception. Studies by Maxwell McCombs and Donald Shaw during the 1968 presidential election demonstrated how media coverage influenced the public's perception of the most important issues. McCombs and Shaw's research during the 1968 presidential election is a classic example of agenda-setting theory. They found that the issues emphasized by the media were the same ones that voters considered most important. This demonstrated that media doesn't just tell people what to think, but rather what to think about. Their work highlighted the powerful role of the media in shaping public discourse and influencing political priorities. The study underscored the importance of media coverage in framing issues and guiding public opinion, which continues to be relevant in today's media landscape. Please watch the following video on agenda-setting theory.
Agenda-setting theory is the idea that the media doesn't tell people what to think, but rather what to think about. This means that when the news covers certain topics more than others, those topics become more important in the public's mind. The theory suggests that the media plays a big role in shaping which issues people see as important, even if they don't directly tell them what opinions to have. The theory originated in the 1970s with researchers Maxwell McCombs and Donald Shaw. They studied how the media influenced what issues people talked about during elections. By comparing the topics in the news with what people said were important issues, they found a strong link. This showed that the more the media talked about something, the more the public saw it as an important issue. One clear example of agenda setting is the coverage of climate change. For many years, the media didn't focus much on climate change, so it wasn't a top concern for many people. But as news outlets started to report more on it, the public began to see it as one of the biggest global issues. Similarly, during elections, when the news covers certain policies or candidates more than others, it can make those topics or people seem more significant to voters. One strength of agenda-setting theory is that it explains how the media influences people's priorities. It helps us understand why some issues, like healthcare or crime, are seen as more important at certain times. By highlighting specific issues, the media can focus public attention on problems that need solutions. This can lead to important discussions and even changes in policy. However, a weakness of the theory is that it assumes people only get their information from the media. In today's world, people also get information from social media, friends, and other sources. The media is no longer the only place people go for news, so its power to set the agenda might not be as strong as it once was. An alternative to agenda-setting theory is framing theory. Framing theory suggests that the way information is presented, the frame, influences how people think about it. For example, a news story about job losses can be framed as a sign of a bad economy, or as a temporary setback. This shows how not just the topics covered, but also how they are discussed can shape public opinion.
Framing theory examines how information is presented in the media and the impact of this presentation on audience interpretation. It focuses on the angles, contexts, and narratives that media outlets choose to highlight. Key components include the following. Frames. These are the central themes or ideas that shape how information is constructed and interpreted. Frames highlight specific aspects of an issue while downplaying others. Framing effects. This refers to the influence that different frames can have on audience opinions and attitudes. The way information is framed can lead to different interpretations and responses from the audience. Visibility and salience. Frames determine what aspects of an issue are visible and salient, prominent, to the audience. This can affect which issues are prioritized in public discourse. Cultural context. Framing is influenced by cultural norms and values, which shape how messages are constructed and understood within different societies. Media influence. The media plays a critical role in framing issues by selecting which frames to emphasize, thus shaping public perception and discourse around specific topics. Robert D. Entman's 1993 study, Framing, Toward Clarification of a Fractured Paradigm, analyzed how different media outlets framed the issue of racial inequality in the United States. Entman's study revealed two key findings. Frame variations. The study showed that news coverage varied significantly between outlets, with some emphasizing systemic racism and others focusing on individual responsibility. And public perception. Depending on the frame used, audience interpretations of racial issues differed. For instance, a frame that highlighted systemic barriers led to greater empathy and support for policy changes, whereas an individual responsibility frame resulted in a more punitive public attitude.
The framing effect is a cognitive bias that happens when people make decisions based on how information is presented or framed, rather than on the actual content of the information itself. This bias argues that the way information is presented might alter our view of reality and impact our decision-making. For example, let's say you're offered a new job with a starting salary of $50,000. If the job offer is framed as a 10% increase from your current salary of $45,000, you may be more likely to accept the offer than if it is framed as a $5,000 increase in salary. This is because the percentage increase is a more favorable frame that makes the offer seem more appealing. The framing effect can also impact how news stories are presented. The way a news story is framed can influence how people perceive the event and the actions of those involved. For example, the framing of a news story about a crime can influence whether people perceive the perpetrator as a dangerous criminal or as a victim of circumstances. Similarly, this effect can impact public policy and political decisions. The way an issue is framed can influence how people perceive it, and ultimately whether they support or oppose a particular policy or political stance. Politicians often use framing to emphasize certain aspects of an issue and downplay others, depending on their goals and objectives. For example, a politician might frame a tax cut as a way to stimulate the economy and create jobs, rather than as a way to benefit the wealthy. Advertising and marketing frequently employ the framing effect to sway consumer behavior. To highlight a product's advantages and generate excitement and anticipation, it can be advertised as new and improved. Instead, a product may be marketed as a limited edition to generate a sense of scarcity and urgency, enticing customers to buy it before it's too late. The framing effect is not always a bad thing. In some cases, it can be used to nudge people toward positive behaviors or outcomes. For example, A campaign to encourage people to save energy might frame it as a way to save money on their energy bills and reduce their carbon footprint, rather than as a sacrifice or inconvenience. Yet, the framing effect can also be utilized to influence people and exploit their preconceptions and prejudices. For example, a news item on crime could frame it in a way that emphasizes the race or ethnicity of the offenders, thus promoting bias. To avoid falling victim to the framing effect, it's important to be aware of how information is presented and to try to consider the actual content of the information itself. This can be challenging, as we are often unaware of the impact that framing can have on our perception of reality. However, by being mindful of the potential for framing bias, we can make more informed and rational decisions. In conclusion, the framing effect is a powerful cognitive bias that can significantly influence the decisions people make. By being aware of the way information is presented and critically evaluating messages, we can mitigate the negative effects of this bias and make more informed and rational choices.
Next, cultivation theory. Cultivation theory, developed by George Gerbner in the 1960s, suggests that long-term exposure to media, particularly television, shapes viewers' perceptions of reality. The theory posits that individuals who consume significant amounts of media are more likely to adopt beliefs and attitudes consistent with the messages portrayed, often leading to a distorted view of the world. Key concepts. Mainstreaming. Heavy TV viewers develop similar beliefs and attitudes due to consistent media messages. Mean world syndrome. Regular exposure to violent media leads viewers to perceive the world as more dangerous than it is. Cultivation differential. This measures the gap in perceptions of reality between heavy and light media viewers, showing how prolonged exposure influences beliefs. Research examples include the following. Violence and fear. Gerbner found that heavy TV viewers perceive the world as more dangerous, correlating with increased fear and mistrust. Gender roles. Signorelli and Bacchio showed that heavy viewers of traditional gender portrayals are more likely to accept stereotypical views about gender. Perceptions of crime. Morgan and Shanahan demonstrated that heavy TV consumption leads to exaggerated beliefs about crime rates compared to light viewers. Please watch the following video on cultivation theory.
Cultivation theory suggests that people who are exposed regularly to media over long periods of time perceives the world's social realities as presented by the media, thus affecting their attitudes and behaviors. Passive as well as interactive medium have direct connection with the cultivation theory. Passive medium TV has immense effects on the thinking and perceptions of people. For example, CSI, crime scene investigation programs on TV, have potential effect on people's perception of forensic medicine and science. A detailed survey concludes that people have intensive expectations towards the forensic science experts, inflated by the entertainment media. Talking about the interactive medium video games is top of the list. You might think, how does all of this relate to video games? Researchers found that games depicting risky behaviors are a decent predictor of those same behaviors in the real-life habits of teens who consume them. The players change their perceptions of real-world dangers based on the dangers present in the game. Interestingly, this only appears to have applied to those dangers specifically present in the game, rather than a more generalized mean world sort of attitude. Cultivation theory is a particular model, based largely around television and interactive experience, which cultivates specific attitudes within its audience.
Uses and gratifications theory. A communication theory that explores why individuals actively seek out specific media and how they use it to satisfy various needs. Key aspects. Active audience. Unlike traditional media theories that view audiences as passive recipients, this theory posits that individuals are active participants in their media consumption. Needs and gratifications. Audiences engage with media to fulfill specific needs, such as information, personal identity, social interaction, entertainment, and escapism. Media selection. Choices about what media to consume are influenced by personal preferences, social contexts, and situational factors. Feedback loop. Audience feedback can affect media content and production, indicating a dynamic relationship between media and consumers. Research applications. The theory has been applied in various studies to understand media usage patterns, especially in the context of new media and digital platforms. Research examples include the following. Katz, Blumler, and Gurevich. Their work outlined the foundational principles of the theory, identifying reasons audiences seek media, such as information and social interaction. Rubin, in The Uses of Mass Communication, Rubin explored how different media fulfill specific audience needs, emphasizing their active role in media selection. Ruggiero, in Uses and Gratifications Theory in the 21st Century, Ruggiero analyzed how the Internet has transformed audience behaviors and gratifications, highlighting the theory's relevance. Sundar and Kim, their study examined how interactivity in online news satisfies audience needs for engagement and participation. Watch the following video on Uses and Gratifications Theory.
Uses and gratification theory is a way to understand why people choose different media, like TV, social media, or video games, and what they get out of using them. It focuses on the idea that people use media to fulfill their own needs and desires, such as learning new things, feeling entertained, or connecting with others. This theory suggests that people actively choose media based on what they want or need. It's not just about what the media does to people, it's more about how people use the media to satisfy their own needs. For example, someone might watch a news program to stay informed, use social media to keep in touch with friends, or play video games to relax. The idea is that people are not just passive consumers. They have reasons for selecting the media they engage with. There are many examples of uses and gratification theory in everyday life. A student might use YouTube to learn how to solve a math problem, showing how they use media for education. Others might watch funny videos to lift their mood, using media for entertainment. Social media platforms like Instagram or Snapchat might be used to connect with friends or share experiences, fulfilling the need for social interaction. Each person has their own reasons for choosing a particular type of media. One strength of uses and gratification theory is that it sees people as active participants in their media choices. It recognizes that people are not simply influenced by media, but instead make their own decisions about what to watch, read, or play based on their needs. This makes the theory flexible because it can be applied to many different types of media, from TV shows to social media apps. However, uses and gratification theory also has some weaknesses. It assumes that people always know why they choose a certain type of media, which might not be true. Sometimes people might use media out of habit without thinking about it. Another criticism is that the theory does not fully explain how the media itself might shape people's choices or influence them in ways they aren't aware of. An alternative to uses and gratification theory is the hypodermic needle theory. This theory suggests that media directly injects ideas and messages into the minds of people like a needle. Unlike uses and gratification theory, which views people as active users of media, the hypodermic needle theory sees them as more passive, easily influenced by what they see or hear. While the hypodermic needle theory highlights the power of media messages, it doesn't focus on the active choices people make in their media use, making it different from the approach taken by uses and gratification theory.
Next, social identity theory. This theory examines how media representations influence individuals' self-concepts and identities, particularly in relation to group membership, for example, race, gender, and nationality. Key components include social categorization. Individuals categorize themselves and others into groups to simplify their social environment. Social identification. people adopt their group identities, influencing their self-esteem and behavior, fostering belonging. Social comparison. Individuals compare their in-group to outgroups, leading to in-group favoritism and potential prejudice. In group dynamics, the theory explains how group identity shapes attitudes and behaviors, contributing to stereotyping and intergroup conflict. Here are some research examples. Tajfel, in social categorization and intergroup behavior, they showed that mere group categorization can lead to in-group favoritism and out-group discrimination. Tajfel and Turner, in the social identity theory of intergroup behavior, they expanded on the theory, discussing social categorization, identification, and comparison. Hogg and Abrams, their work, Social Identifications, explored how social identity influences group behavior and intergroup relations. Haslam, in Social Identity, Social Influence, they examined how group identity drives collective action and social change. Please watch the following video.
Social identity theory, developed by social psychologist Henri Tajfel in the 1970s, explores the psychological underpinnings of group dynamics and intergroup relationships by examining how individuals define themselves based on group affiliations. This theory consists of three main components: social categorization, social identification, and social comparison. In social categorization, people sort themselves and others into groups based on characteristics like race, nationality, religion, or profession. These groups help structure our social environment, but can also lead to stereotyping. An example of a stereotype is assuming that all engineers are introverted and prefer solitary work, which overlooks the diversity of personalities in the field. If you're getting value out of this video, consider subscribing to my channel so that you don't miss the next episode about how psychology affects our day-to-day life. The second component, social identification, occurs when people adopt the identity of the group they belong to, influencing their behavior, beliefs, and self-esteem. For example, identifying strongly as a member of a specific sports team or political party can shape how someone views themselves and those outside their group. This identification process builds emotional attachment to the group, promoting unity and fostering a shared group identity. Social comparison, the third component, emphasizes how individuals evaluate their group positively by contrasting it with others, aiming to boost self-esteem. This often leads to an in-group versus out-group mentality, where people may view their own group more favorably and exaggerate negative traits of others. Such distinctions can result in discrimination or conflict between groups, especially when competition for resources or status arises. The minimal group paradigm, a famous experiment by Tajfel, highlights the ease of in-group bias. In this experiment, participants divided into arbitrary groups based on trivial criteria, such as art preferences, displayed favoritism toward their own group, even without any prior bond. This outcome reveals that simply categorizing into groups can trigger preferential treatment, regardless of the group's significance or the members' similarities. Social identity theory also explains phenomena like ethnocentrism and prejudice. Ethnocentrism, the belief in the superiority of one's culture or group, stems from this innate tendency to favor the in-group. Prejudice and stereotyping emerge when assumptions about an out-group generalize to all members, influencing how they're perceived and treated. Consequently, social identity influences both positive group cohesion and negative intergroup bias, highlighting the complex role it plays in societal dynamics. In application, social identity theory is key in understanding social behaviors, conflicts, and group-based movements. It's widely used to analyze nationalism, organizational behavior, and even social media dynamics. By understanding these elements, psychologists can better interpret individual and group behavior in diverse settings.
Next, understanding media effects on society. Media acts as a powerful tool that informs, influences, and reflects societal dynamics, shaping both individual and collective experiences. Direct effects. Media can lead to immediate changes in attitudes and behaviors, exemplified by phenomena like the bandwagon effect and spiral of silence, where individuals conform to prevailing media narratives. Long-term effects. Continuous media exposure influences societal norms and values over time, impacting issues such as body image, the normalization of violence, and political polarization through repeated messaging. Cultural effects. Media shapes cultural narratives and social norms, affecting everything from fashion trends to political ideologies. Analyzing film and television reveals how they reflect and influence broader societal changes. Psychological effects. Media consumption can impact mental health and well-being, with social media linked to increased anxiety, depression, and self-esteem issues. The following are case studies of media influence. Political campaigns. Media coverage of the 2008 and 2016 U.S. elections illustrates how framing and agenda setting shaped voter perceptions, including the impact of televised debates and social media. Public health communication. During the COVID-19 pandemic, media framed health issues, influencing public responses to guidelines and vaccine uptake. Social movements. Coverage of the Black Lives Matter movement shows how media framing affects public discourse on race, police reform, and social justice. Cultural representation. Analyzing media portrayals of gender and sexuality reveals their impact on societal attitudes toward LGBTQ+ communities and cultural stereotypes. Reaction paper number 3. Choose one of the following 5 questions. 1. Media's role in shaping importance. Do you believe that the media has the power to shape what people think is important? Can you think of a recent news story that shows this influence? Share your thoughts and reasons for your answer. 2. Framing and public perception. How do you think the way a news story is framed affects public opinion? Provide an example of a social issue where framing changed the way you or people around you perceive the issue. 3. Long-term effects of media exposure. According to cultivation theory, long-term exposure to media can shape our views of reality. Do you think this is true? How has your own media consumption affected your views on issues like violence or gender roles? 4. Active audience engagement. Uses and gratifications theory suggests that people actively choose media to meet their needs. What media do you use most often, and what needs do you think it fulfills for you? Reflect on whether you believe you are an active participant in your media consumption. Or 5. Social identity and media influence. Social identity theory emphasizes how group memberships shape our identity. Do you think the media plays a role in how we identify with certain groups? Share your thoughts on how media representations of different groups impact societal attitudes. Homework. Review lesson number 3. Choose one of the 5 reaction paper number 3 questions. Use detailed examples to support your answer, and type and post on Manaba by the due date and time. Please complete quiz number 3 by the due date and time. Thank you. The following are additional resources for further study. Media Theory, an introduction by Andrew Beck. This textbook provides a comprehensive overview of key media theories, including agenda setting, framing, and cultivation theory, along with their applications in contemporary media studies. Theories of Mass Communication by Dennis McQuail and Sven Windahl, an in-depth analysis of various theories regarding mass communication, examining how media influences society and the theoretical frameworks that explain these processes. Understanding Media, The Extensions of Man by Marshall McLuhan, a foundational text that explores how different media technologies shape human perceptions and society, emphasizing the effects of media on culture and communication. Media Effects, Advances in Theory and Research by Jennings Bryant and Dolph Zillman. This book compiles key research and theories on media effects, providing a thorough examination of how media influences audiences and societal norms. Framing Public Life, Perspectives on Media and Our Understanding of the Social World, edited by Stephen D. Rees, Oscar H. Gandy Jr., and August E. Grant. This collection of essays delves into framing theory and its implications for public understanding, offering various perspectives on media framing and its societal effects. The Agenda-Setting Function of Mass Media by Maxwell McCombs and Donald Shaw, a seminal article that explores how media influences public perception by setting the agenda for what issues are deemed important. Framing, Toward Clarification of a Fractured Paradigm by William A. Gamson and Andre Modigliani. This article discusses framing theory, its components, and its significance in understanding media effects. Cultivation Analysis, an overview by George Gerbner, an article that outlines cultivation theory and its implications for how long-term exposure to media shapes viewers' perceptions of reality. Uses and Gratifications Theory in the 21st Century by Michael J. Hennigan. This article examines the uses and gratifications theory in the context of modern media consumption, exploring audience motivations and behaviors. Media Influence on the Public's Attitude Towards Social Issues, a Case Study of Immigration, in the Journal of Communication, an analysis of how media coverage influences public attitudes towards immigration, highlighting the role of framing in agenda setting. The Pew Research Center, a valuable resource for research reports and statistics on media trends, public opinion, and the effects of media on society. The International Communication Association, an organization that provides access to research, publications, and resources related to media studies and communication theories. Media Studies Journal, an academic journal featuring articles on various aspects of media studies, including media effects and theoretical frameworks. The Media Effects Research page, a website dedicated to media effects research, providing links to studies, articles, and resources related to media influence. Documentaries on media influence. Documentaries such as The Social Dilemma and Misrepresentation provide insights into the effects of media on society and culture, illustrating theories discussed in this lesson. TED Talks on Media Theories. Various speakers discuss media theories and their implications for understanding contemporary issues in communication and society. And podcasts on media effects. Podcasts like The Media Show and On the Media feature discussions on media influence, public perception, and the role of media in shaping societal narratives. These reference materials will help you deepen your understanding of media theories and frameworks, the effects of media on society, and real-world case studies of media influence, enriching your learning experience throughout the course.